and welcome to Art and Artist. I'm your host, Alex Sielaff. Before I tell you what this podcast is all about, I would like to start with an invitation to curiosity. So I'd like you to start by thinking about your current day-to-day life. What sort of things do you feel throughout your day? Do you love your life? The ways you spend your limited time and energy each day? Is your life now what you imagined it would be when you were a child? Have you ever wished culture and society were different, so you could in turn be doing something different with your time? Why do you hold the beliefs, the morals, and the values that you currently hold? Where did those beliefs come from? Was it you when you were a kid in your bedroom, alone with a notebook, pondering ethics and morality and life after death? Your beliefs are all unique to you and free from external influence? Or were beliefs planted in your brain while you were still developing? By parents, education systems, religious institutions, movies, TV shows, just observing the people around you? And now to take our curiosity beyond the personal, have you ever considered how many different ways there are for culture to be configured? We could consider all of the cultures that have ever existed, and we could even imagine all of the cultures to come in the future. All of the ways there are to educate children, the wide range of beliefs that have existed about God or gods, the range of economic systems and ways of governing right versus wrong, the ways giant societies versus tiny tribes are organized. And what about cultures that we can imagine, but that have not existed? My intention is not to overwhelm or to get lost in abstractions, but rather to stoke curiosity about the nature of culture and about how much we just accept it and take it for granted. All right, thanks for entertaining my little exercise in curiosity. I hope by listening to this podcast, perhaps you develop new answers to the questions in that little exercise. But more so than that, I hope that this podcast has you considering new dimensions and new layers to those questions. So my academic background is in experimental existential psychology, where we study questions of being and becoming, of knowing that we exist, of knowing that we die, of meaning and purpose, of knowing that we share the same fate as a cucumber, a kangaroo, and a cockroach. But most importantly, or at least of most relevance to this podcast, we study the role of culture in answering all of these existential questions. And what do art and artists have to do with any of this? Well, they're the ones that create culture. They're the ones that change culture. And culture heavily influences the ways that we answer those existential questions, which in turn heavily influences the ways that we spend our time each and every day. And so when I talk about artists, I am talking about poets and playwrights, drummers and dancers. I'm more so talking about a type of personality. It's more so an approach to life, which means it's not so much about what we do, but it's about how we do it. And since we all possess the creative and even sexual energy in us that animates all art, we are all artists, and we can choose to tap into that creative potential at any moment of any day, which means that our lives are the canvas on which we create. And it's just a matter of when and in what domains we choose to express that creative potential. Another way to think of this is through the metaphor of the rock in the hard place. So by the mere fact of our existence, and that we know that we exist, and that we know that we're going to die someday, it brings up questions of meaning and purpose and the awareness that we know we're going to die, but we don't know what happens after we die, and that these questions are inherently unanswerable. And so we're stuck between the rock and the hard place. If we take the rock approach, we believe that we have a certain answer to these uncertain questions. And if we embrace the hard place, we embrace the mystery of the fact that we don't know. Rock type of worldviews prefer sameness and conformity, and especially predictability. There may be some learning and creativity that occurs, but it occurs within certain cultural boundedness. Rock type worldviews are associated with accepting the cultural script without questioning it, whereas the hard place is called the hard place not so much because of its physical hardness, but because it's psychologically harder to embrace. It's embracing the mystery. It's embracing that we don't know. It's embracing variety and dynamism, growth, and the growing pains that come with it. Instead of seeing the boundaries of culture as the box they need to exist within, they approach those cultural boundaries with curiosity and playfulness. Rocks solve for their fear of death by not being alive, by denying and suppressing the creative energy that was responsible for their very own births. Embracing the hard place, on the other hand, solves for the fear of death by allowing that creative energy to flow through them. Artists embrace the hard place. And while I just framed it as a dichotomy, as if we choose one or the other, it's more about domains of life and which domains we choose to express the artistic path and embracing the hard place versus which domains of life we choose to embrace the rock worldview. And it's up to each of us to choose when and where we embrace that artistic approach to life. Where all of this becomes especially timely in this 21st century we live in is in times of conflict. When opposing opinions collide, when worldviews clash, when something feels out of tune, we have a decision to make. Option A is to double down, dig our heels in, remain unchangeable. And option B is to get playful, curious, co-create some art together. And just as sex requires two parties and a certain sort of friction in order to birth new life into the world, artistic solutions also require a certain sort of creative friction. And just as in birthing a child, the resulting art, when we choose the artistic path, is not just the sum of the two co-creators. Artistic solutions take on a life of their own. If there's a point I hope to drive home with this podcast, it is that you are an artist and your life is your artwork. We all have access to that creative potential, and we all get to choose when and in what domains we express it. And in the eternal words of Geddy Lee, frontman of the band Rush, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. So this is your invitation to choose creative expression. I think we're fortunate to live in such an era of change. I think we're fortunate to be able to have conversations at the boundaries of what is culturally acceptable. So let's get creative about the ways that we educate our children, about the ways that we enforce laws. Let's get creative about the ways that we relate to the ecosystems that we belong to and that we rely on for food, water, and air. Let's get creative about the ways that we relate to money. Let's get creative about how we focus our creative potential. This podcast is named after a 1932 book written by Otto Rank called Art and Artist, Creative Urge and Personality Development. Otto Rank was in Sigmund Freud's inner circle in the early 1900s, and similar to Carl Jung, he had a falling out with Freud when his ideas began to contradict those of Freud's. And so this podcast is sort of an ode to Otto Rank and his legacy, since Otto Rank is sort of like an academic great-grandfather of mine, since his ideas were passed down through the works of people like Ernest Becker, Stanislav Grof, Tom Pazinski, Sheldon Solomon, Jeff Greenberg, and ultimately down to me. Episodes in this podcast will be a combination of interviews and solo episodes. Interviews will be conducted with people I meet along my life's journey who I see as embodying some aspect of the artistic personality type, while solo episodes will be me diving deeper into certain topics from my background as an experimental existential psychologist. My hope is that these episodes inspire creativity and playfulness in your life, and maybe that curiosity and playfulness leads to some sort of change, whether it's just picking up a new hobby, maybe coming up with a creative solution to some conflict you're facing, or maybe it inspires you to quit your boring job and pursue something you've been passionate about your whole life. Or maybe it just inspires you to turn the TV off and go listen to the trees instead. All right, folks, stay curious, and thanks for tuning in.